The Wolf Wilder, Chapter 2. The wolf who arrived 2 weeks after the General's warning was a young one, a female with a beautiful tail, but fatter than any wolf should be. Usually, when the carriages arrived at the house in the woods, the drivers would blink, looking around for someone large and male to come and untie the wolf. Instead, they would see Theo and her mother coming from the house, wrapped in cooking smells. Marina was 33 and tall as the lintel on the front door. She had taught Theo to do pull-ups on the cottage door frames. She had a 4-clawed scar circling her left eye. Men who met her had been known to forget, just for a second, how to breathe. This morning, though, Theo greeted the cart alone. She took the struggling wolf in her arms, nudging away the driver's offer of help, and laid her in the snow. She stroked her head, and she quietened. The wolf's fur was the blackest Theo had ever seen. At night she would be invisible. In fact, darker than the night itself, because Russian nights, especially when there is snow to reflect the stars, are never absolutely dark. "Good to meet you," said Theo to the wolf. She ignored the driver and dipped her face, touching her nose to the wolf's muzzle. The wolf licked her chin. Her breath smelt reassuringly of spit and silver coins, but the long tongue was swollen and bleeding a little. "She's bitten herself," said Theo. "You should have driven her more carefully." She looked properly at the driver. He was a big man with long nose hair that blended seamlessly into his beard. "Did you pass any soldiers on the way?" "What? Why would I?" "Nothing in that case." Theo shook her head hard. "Forget I said that." She untied the wolf softly, keeping her hands where the wolf could see them. Her claws were too long, starting to curl inwards towards the pads of her feet. Theo took her knife, balanced one of the wolf's paws on her knee, and began to cut the claws. "Have you got any food for her?" Theo asked the driver. "She's hungry." He raised his eyebrows. "No, she's fat enough already." Theo braced the wolf's jaw open against her torso and ran her fingers along the teeth, pushing at the gums. "You... Little girl, stop that! Mother of God!" The man let out an impressive cascade of swear words. Theo noticed with interest that his fingernails were sweating. "Do you want to be killed? What are you doing?" "I'm checking for gum decay." There was none. She let the wolf go and scratched her under the front legs. The wolf collapsed on her side, whimpering with pleasure. The man still looked horrified and almost angry. "Shouldn't that thing have a bit of rope around its jaws?" He was staring at Theo, at her eyes and at her earlobe. It had been split in two by an accidental wolf's claw when she was 6. Theo shook her hair over her face and gave him a withering look. At least, she tried to. She had only read about it in books and wasn't sure how it was done. She imagined it involved a lot of nostril work. Wolves don't wear rope. They're not like dogs. They had more fire in them, she thought, and uneven tempers. It was difficult to explain. She bit her lip, thinking how to put it, then shook her head. Other people were so difficult. "You could go, if you felt like you wanted to. That's how I'd feel if I were you." Marina emerged from the house, her hair half braided, just in time to see the cart disappearing. "He didn't want a drink?" she asked. "No," said Theo. She grinned at her mother. "He didn't seem that keen on staying, actually." "That's probably just as well. Come quickly, let's get her under the trees and out of sight." "You think they're watching us?" Theo stared round at the snow. "It's possible, Lapushka. I don't think it was an empty threat. Empty threats, in my experience, involved fewer breakages. The wolf walked agonisingly slowly towards the woods, yelping as she went, as if unfamiliar with cold. Marina dusted snow from Theo's hair. We may need to talk about what might happen. Uh-huh. The wolf was coughing. Theo laid 2 fingers on her throat and kneaded gently. What did she do you think? Why did they send her away? They said she got into the Countess's wardrobe and chewed up the dresses. But are you listening to me? That's all. She didn't bite anyone. Yes, sorry, I'm listening. Theo thought about her pack. Grey had bitten off the thumb of a visiting tax collector. White had scraped a cut an inch deep in a duchess's thigh when she had tried to make her dance for visitors. And black had eaten 3 toes which, technically, had belonged to an English lord. Her wolves, Theo thought, were a bunch of the most beautiful criminals. If Rakov's men are watching us, you can't be seen with the wolves in public. Of course, you already said that, Mama, and I asked the driver if he saw any soldiers, and he said no. You did what? Marina looked startled. My darling, you mustn't mention soldiers to anybody. It's not wise to let strangers know you have anything to fear. Oh. Theo's insides felt suddenly a little tighter, a little hotter. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. It's my fault. I should have warned you. Marina rubbed both hands through her hair. I've been making an escape plan, just in case. The wolf set the side of her muzzle against Theo's knee and coughed. Mama, did she swallow the dresses? If she's still got material in her teeth, it could be hurting her. Theo, leave the... Look, Mama. Theo pushed open the wolf's jaws. Wolf spit covered her hand as she felt carefully inside. At the back of the wolf's mouth, a wedge of cloth had stuck between the teeth. Theo tugged. It was red velvet, with one tiny seed pearl surviving from the embroidery. There, and also this thread they used to tie her is too thin, said Theo. She held up the wolf's paw for her mother to see. Look, blood, there, see? Her paws are so fragile. She kissed the wolf's ear. We shall call you Tenderfoot. Here, I've got some ointment. Marina bent and rubbed some brownish paste on the wolf's paw. Her hands were faster than most people's, and the wolf relaxed into her grip. But Theo, do you understand? You'll need to pack a bag, food, dry clothes, a knife, rope, and keep it by the back door, just in case. Theo dragged her attention away from Tenderfoot. In case what though, Mama? In case Rakov comes back for us. But he wouldn't, would he? I mean, he's old. Theo tried to push away the memory of his eyes staring out at her from the yellowed face. Old people like sitting down and growing ear hair and soup. Theo had met very few old people. He'll be busy doing those things. Marina smiled, but the corners of her mouth looked heavy. Just keep your eyes open, Lapushka. If you want to see the wolves, stay in the chapel or behind the house. We'll wild this one as quickly as we can and release her at the woods to the west by the kidney-shaped lake so she won't stray near Rakov. But those woods are bad for hunting. She'll starve. Not if we teach her to catch birds. Besides, wolves find a way. Wolves are the witches of the animal world.